Anyway, we'll look at the Emmanuel Fabian take in a second. I have to pee real quick though, while this goes.
On this statement from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, there's more of it coming in. He says, "I've just concluded a 4-hour discussion in the Political Security Cabinet. We all expressed outrage at the shocking situation of our 3 hostages who were released last Saturday. We also, the pictures you're seeing, by the way, is King Abdullah, who has just arrived for a meeting." Oh, is it? Forgive me, I'll carry on. We also welcomed President Trump's demand for the release of our hostages by Saturday noon, and we also welcomed the president's revolutionary vision for the future of Gaza. In the light of Hamas's announcement of its decision to violate the agreement and not release our hostages, last night I ordered the IDF to amass forces inside and around the Gaza Strip. This operation is taking place at these hours. It will be completed in the very near future. The decision that I passed unanimously in the cabinet is this: if Hamas does not return our hostages by Saturday at noon, the ceasefire will be terminated and the IDF will return to intense fighting until Hamas is finally defeated. And of course, it was Hamas that had earlier claimed that it was Israel breaking the deal, the terms of the deal, by not putting sufficient aid.
Yeah, it was Israel breaking the deal, by the way, which is crazy because the New York Times, which famously has written about Trump's ethnic cleansing campaign as a development project, which is crazy, okay, has also written an article on this, okay, where they buried the lead. So we covered the violations extensively yesterday, okay? There are 22 different violations, but the top line violations obviously were, Israel refusing all of the aid that they said they would let in to the Gaza Strip. They never actually adhered to the ceasefire conditions at all. But what was really interesting, and this is Jeremy Scahill's reporting on it as well, 9 paragraphs into today's New York Times story on the situation with the Gaza ceasefire, readers are informed that Israeli officials and international mediators said Hamas's claims about Israel's violation of the ceasefire were accurate. 9 paragraphs in. The current standoff stems in part from Hamas's accusation that Israel failed to uphold its promises for the first phase of the ceasefire, a 6-week period that started on January 19th. Under the terms of the deal, Israel was required to send hundreds of thousands of tents into Gaza, among other humanitarian supplies, a promise that Hamas says Israel has not kept. Speaking on the condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive matter, 3 Israeli officials and 2 mediators said that Hamas's claims were accurate. That's insane. 9 paragraphs deep. This is ridiculous, dude. It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. It is crazy to me that the New York Times, the gray lady, okay, the paper of record, is this bad. I mean, deliberately, okay? This bad, this deliberately, in terms of doing propaganda for the state of Israel and for America's interest in the state of Israel, in Gaza, the ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza. And it's additionally wild because, like, the New York Times does this worse than everybody else. Like, the New York Times is more obvious with its propaganda than all of the other Western publications. Yeah, I covered this before as well. Out of all of the Western publications, New York Times, truly remains in a league of its own. Almost every headline from a major news org has mentioned the reason why Hamas is postponing the release. Then there's the Times. Hamas postpones release of hostages until further notice. Hamas says it will stop releasing hostages, accuses Israel of ceasefire violations. Like these aren't even. I think they're not using a passive voice when describing this, where they're basically claiming that Hamas might be lying, right? But even then, they at least say what the reason is. Hamas suspends hostage release, says Israel's not following the ceasefire agreement. Hamas accuses Israel of ceasefire violations and says it will delay next release of hostages. New York Times, on the other hand, is straight up saying Hamas is just postponing the release of hostages until further notice. I wonder why. Since the ceasefire agreement, Israel has bombed the shop Palestinians in Gaza while refusing to allow in the agreed upon amounts of aid. None of these facts appear in the New York Times reporting today, just a vague reference to Hamas accusations. So when they do actually report on it, they barely say, like, even when they were mentioning it initially, okay, even when they were mentioning it yesterday, they were like, Hamas has indefinitely postponed the release of Israeli hostages who were said to be freed from the Gaza Strip this weekend, a spokesman said on Monday, accusing Israel's government of violating an already fragile ceasefire agreement. That is supposed to be the title. Okay? In a statement on Telegram, Abu Ubaidah, the spokesman for Hamas' military wing, accused Israel of a host of violations of the ceasefire agreement. That's supposed to be the headline. And then you're supposed to elaborate further on what the actual hostage release violations have been. What the ceasefire, the lack of commitment from Israel in terms of following the conditions of the ceasefire have been. And these accusations have been confirmed and substantiated by the Israeli side as well. The New York Times' newest reporting shows that reality, except it is 9 paragraphs in. Nine. That's crazy. I'm sorry, but this is obviously like doing propaganda for American foreign policy, American State Department interests, and not actually accurately describing what is going on. Your job as a newspaper is to inform people. Your job as a newspaper is not to lie by omission or to show only one side or to just basically show both sides and say, here, make up your mind. Your job is to say the truth. This is a disservice in the most like apolitical way to describe the situation. The New York Times is doing a disservice to its readers so consistently on this issue. Okay? It is additionally terrifying and additionally damaging when the New York Times is doing a disservice to journalism at a time when people need good journalism more than ever. Okay? It's crazy. It's crazy that this is happening when so much of the misinformation economy is supercharged on Twitter and people literally just get rewarded. Like there's an incentive structure for lying. Okay? The media needs to lock in. This is the moment where the media needs to lock in and do good journalism to show Americans, to restore some confidence in Americans, in the minds of Americans, to basically say, like, this isn't correct. Here's what is actually happening. And yet they have leaned so desperately into doing propaganda that they're basically destroying the last bit of good faith that they have in an effort to ensure that the remaining readership of like older readers of the New York Times stay committed to the project in Israel. It's crazy. Read it in Israel's mass circulation newspaper, Mariv. The Israeli army and security establishment confirmed that so far Hamas has not violated the ceasefire deal. At the same time, the defense establishment and the IDF say that so far the terrorist organization has not violated the agreement, and therefore it is very doubtful whether Israel can take steps against Hamas at this stage. But it doesn't matter. It looks like the Israeli army doesn't want to go back to full-scale war, something that I also mentioned. Remember? Because while Benjamin Netanyahu wants the war to continue, Benjamin Netanyahu wants to go back to genocide. Okay, Benjamin Netanyahu's followers and those to the far right, even more right-wing than Benjamin Netanyahu, want the bombing campaign to continue. There isn't as much appetite from the military. And part of that is because they took a great deal of damage. This is something, the economy is in ruins. Like the Israeli economy is in ruins. Morale is in ruins. Like the very fact that the ceasefire was being discussed and they were still doing operations in North Gaza at the time before the ceasefire was implemented. And Israel experienced 15 of their soldiers get exploded in North Gaza, a place that they have supposedly completely ethnically cleansed, is a major L. Okay? These guys do not have unlimited resources. They have unlimited bombs that come from the United States of America, and they have utilized those unlimited bombs. Okay? Having said that, however, in terms of boots on the ground military warfare, at the end of the day, there's a finite amount of resources there. You don't have endless amounts of soldiers. You also don't have an endless amount of appetite for death and destruction from said soldiers, especially when they just want to go back and be a DJ, you know? They want to go back to their DJ jobs. They want to go back to making chocolate hummus or whatever, okay? Or do marketing jobs. Like, these are reservists, okay? So there is no permanent warfare that Israel can maintain. That's part of the reason why I thought that there would be at least some semblance of a ceasefire, as some kind of ceasefire that would be maintained so that they could at least like recoup and recover and restore numbers in their forces, so they could end up, I don't know, either going back into Gaza, but potentially just engage in the permanent annexation of the West Bank. Best case scenario, Israel will back down from the crisis it created by predictably and blatantly violating the agreement and continuing to try to starve Gaza. And then Israel will claim victory and Trump will take credit, saying his threats against Hamas did the job. On this front, there's also some additional news that suggests that even Benjamin Netanyahu understands what I'm saying. Axios is quoting Israeli officials. Netanyahu does not demand all 76 hostages on Saturday, but wants to continue implementing the first phase. So Trump gave Benjamin Netanyahu the opportunity to go back to genocide, saying that Benjamin Netanyahu can do whatever he wants. If he wants to veto what I'm suggesting here, he has every right to do so. Okay? And Benjamin Netanyahu seemingly is taking that opportunity. What Israeli media close to Netanyahu is saying, this is from Elint News. We published in the edition, cabinet source to Channel 14. Oh, yeah, this is Bibi's channel. High chance that Hamas will blow up the deal in the coming days. We are preparing for a massive war. This could be posturing from Benjamin Netanyahu, especially considering that on the other side, they're still stating that they want to continue the first stage of the ceasefire. Following a fresh assessment, the IDF says it is further bolstering force in the Southern Command after Hamas said it would postpone the release of hostages. The military describes the bolstering of troops as extensive and says it included calling up reservists. The reinforcement of troops and mobilization of reservists are being carried out in preparation for various scenarios, the IDF says. So there's conflicting reporting on this, but I still suspect that like they have very limited capabilities of like bringing troops back into Gaza at this stage. The IDF Southern Command is approving battle plans for the Gaza Strip in the event that the ceasefire hostage deal with Hamas collapses. According to the military, currently 2 IDF divisions are responsible for defenses along the Gaza border and the Philadelphia corridor, and the 162nd Division and Gaza Division. Since last night, several brigades and special forces units were deployed to the Southern Command to bolster the existing forces. Several more brigades are on standby and will be deployed to Southern Command if necessary. Additional divisions are currently in the process of preparing for possible deployment to Gaza, depending on the developments. The IDF says there are no changes to guidelines for civilians at this stage, and it is prepared for a variety of scenarios. Troop movement and mobilization is yet another way to apply pressure and to say, oh yeah, we're ready to go if need be. Over 50% of coalition voters in the Channel 12 survey, by the way, this is from a couple days ago on the 8th of February, according to Times of Israel, 70% of Israelis support the second phase of the hostage ceasefire deal. So even the appetite from the broader Israeli public for continued war has definitely softened. Over 50% of the coalition voters in Channel 12 survey backed the second stage of the agreement, which would see Hamas free some 60 captives, 24 of them living, in exchange for full IDF withdrawal from Gaza. 70% of the Israeli public is in favor of continuing the second phase of the hostage release and ceasefire deal with Hamas, according to a television poll aired Friday, which found a nearly identical figure backs U.S. President Donald Trump's proposal to relocate Palestinians outside the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, Trump's trying to undermine it because the broad popular support for any initiative is completely negligible in this circumstance. I need you to understand this, okay? It is completely and utterly irrelevant. What Americans want don't matter. What even the Israelis want don't matter. What the Israelis want matter to a certain degree because that is what keeps Benjamin Netanyahu alive politically, okay? And he recognizes that because on the other end of this bargain, once the war cabinet is disbanded, if Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't have enough popular support on his own with his own party and the coalition that he has, then he's no longer going to be in power and he'll go to jail, most likely. His prosecution will continue. So on that front, yes, I think that there is a certain degree of following what the broad popular sentiment is. That's the reason why they also attacked Lebanon, because that was a very popular position, okay? And it only increased his support. But having Donald Trump be Benjamin Netanyahu's guy is certainly a benefit for Netanyahu, because everyone in Israel understands that they can't do anything without full-blown, full-throated American support. Benjamin Netanyahu's big selling point for years was basically how he knew how to control American Congress. He knew how to basically play ball with the Americans. The other big selling point for the broader Israeli public for Benjamin Netanyahu was that he was the security guy. He would keep Israel secure. Now, that fell apart on October 7, but he's been able to basically restore pieces of that by doing this endless, unlimited bloodshed campaign. Donald Trump has given Benjamin Netanyahu the opportunity to restore the unlimited genocide now by coming out yesterday and saying, listen, if Hamas doesn't release all of the hostages, all 76, including the bodies, then Israel can go back and say, fuck the ceasefire deal. I don't care. Now it's up to Benjamin Netanyahu to say, no, we don't want all 76. We just want to maintain the current ceasefire agreement. Or to say, yeah, Trump gave me the go ahead and we're just going to, I'm going to follow through on an ultimatum. Netanyahu, as of 2 hours ago, says, I have just finished an in-depth 4-hour security cabinet meeting. We all expressed outrage over the shocking state of our 3 hostages who were released last Saturday. Netanyahu says he passed a unanimous decision in the security cabinet. If Hamas does not return our hostages by Saturday noon, the ceasefire will be terminated, and the IDF will resume intense fighting until Hamas is finally defeated. Ironic, because the statement here basically is, if we don't get the hostages back during the ceasefire, then we're just going to kill the hostages. That's what he's saying. He's just like, yeah, we're gonna murder them. We're gonna murder all the remaining alive hostages. Yeah. Eddie Cohen posted this. It's weird, but shows Israeli attitude to the relations. The real leader in the Blue House. I mean, yeah, it's not wrong. They also gave Israel Moab missiles so they can use it to scare off Iran. Yeah. Why would he murder the hostages? Not baiting right now? What do you mean? It's already Israeli military doctrine to murder the hostages. The previous defense minister Yoav Gallant openly admitted that on October 7 they implemented the Hannibal protocol, which is the Hannibal doctrine, which is literally the standing Israeli military directive that if Hamas or any sort of militancy is actually taking Israeli hostages, it's better to just kill the Israeli hostages and not let them use the Israeli hostages as a leverage point. He also openly admitted that, yes, Israel followed through on this process on October 7th. He said Israel killed Israeli hostages that were being taken hostage by Hamas on October 7th. There are plenty of people currently in the Israeli government that openly say that the hostages are a hurdle, Itamar Ben-Gvir being one of them. Like, they'll just straight up say it. They'll be like, yeah, the hostages are a nuisance. They're annoying. We have military goals here, which is, full tilt ethnic cleansing of the Gaza Strip. And the pesky Israeli citizens who are immediate family members and friends of these hostages that are still in Gaza want them to return alive. And that's really annoying because, it makes it politically less advantageous to continue doing ethnic cleansing in Gaza when the ultimate goal is to do ethnic cleansing in Gaza. After the past 16 months, I think everyone can understand that the only thing Israel responds to is force. That's it. Here is the Yair Lapid, the so-called Israeli opposition, by the way. The Israeli government must bring everyone home. There is nothing more important than that. There is nothing more urgent than that. The hostages have no time. Hamas is a despicable terrorist organization that will do anything to harm the hostages in Israel. We have no expectations from Hamas. The responsibility lies with Netanyahu, who is again delaying, again harming the process, again abandoning the kidnapped. He doesn't need to be afraid of Smotrich. He has a safety net to bring the kidnapped back home. Please don't say force law. Israel is eye for eye. They respond to harm. No bias. You do be fair in reading most people's comments. No, Israel has shown time and time again that diplomacy with Israel is not the way to go. That is what they've taught every single regional actor. That is a lesson, a dangerous lesson that they've taught every single regional actor. The only time they back down, or the only time when they actually respond with limited retaliation, is if they think that this will harm them personally. Think about it. With Iran, think about what Israel's retaliation to Iran looks like versus what Israel's retaliation to Gaza looks like. As a matter of fact, anytime Israel feels like they have gotten fucked over, okay, with any kind of militant resistance, they end up going back and punishing the civilian population of Gaza. That's the only thing they know. The only thing they know is harming civilians, women and children. That's it. Think about Israel's actions in southern Lebanon and how quickly they packed up the southern Lebanon, the southern Lebanon invasion. Why did they do that? Because they had to go against a standing military force. Okay? Hezbollah is the standing military force in southern Lebanon and in Lebanon in general. And while they assassinated through acts of terror a big part of the Hezbollah leadership, including, first responders that also happen to be using the same pagers, okay, and assassinating a shit ton of civilians in the process by taking out entire city blocks in Beirut, Hezbollah was still standing and mounted a significant defense against the Israeli incursion. And obviously, they did not have the same ease that they did inside of the Gaza Strip in southern Lebanon. Why? Because people were actually fighting back. Also, Hamas is capable of hearing what Trump is saying as well. This was their response to Trump's statements. A call for ethnic cleansing. In a statement published on his Telegram channel, Hamas rejected President Donald Trump's insistence on the U.S. taking over Gaza and transferring 2 million Palestinians to Jordan and Egypt. It's true. You can say, oh, Hamas, those are the bad guys. Those are terrorists. But it's still true. It doesn't change that reality at all. Okay? Saying that you want to forcibly relocate 2 million people, 2 million Palestinians from the Gaza Strip is a call for ethnic displacement. It is genocide, okay? It is a direct call for genocide. I don't know what more you can say in this process for people to understand it. The very fact that people are not more alarmed by Donald Trump's very open, active calls for genocide, the very fact that there aren't people going, what the hell are you saying? This is definitionally, legally the standard for ethnic cleansing. You are advocating for ethnic cleansing by simply saying it's a mass relocation program. The very fact that people just don't lose their minds at this is shocking. But I guess we have gotten very used to this kind of thing after the last 16 months.
aid in. The Israelis have denied that. And now, of course, we have the statement from Benjamin Netanyahu, who you can see there during his meeting with Donald Trump recently. So that's the latest from the office of the Prime Minister.
And some sun with us today, so it's good to see you again. We've had some quick discussions just now, and we're going to have some longer discussions.
Here's the other side of the story. What? Mossad and CIA don't scare you? Hamas can't win law? They're too powerful? I don't understand. Like, if fear of powerful figures and powerful organizations were to stop me from saying the truth, I would have never come out against Israel ever. Okay? This is not about Hamas winning. Okay? This is about the truth. This is about standing against genocide. That's it. It's that simple for me. Holy shit, look at this image of King Abdullah. So I talked about this yesterday, about Trump saying he wants to do a mass relocation, a mass ethnic displacement campaign of the 2 million, close to 2 million Palestinians that still live in the Gaza Strip. And he wants to move them forcibly to the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt and also to Jordan. Okay? You're not the only person who says Israel only responds to force, not diplomacy. Yeah, I mean, this is Mersheimer. He's been on this for quite some time. King Abdullah is nothing but another traitor to the Palestinian cause is so sad. Yeah, here's the thing. Jordan, as a state, is basically designed by Western powers as a holdover state, and historically has been used to basically keep Palestinians that have been displaced in Jordan. There are already millions of Palestinians living inside of the Jordanian boundary. So for the king of Jordan, obviously, you know, an additional 500,000 Palestinians is going to be an additional 500,000 Palestinians, especially when you're, when you're dumping them into a refugee camp, is going to be impossible to deal with. Okay? And as I mentioned before, America is claiming that if Jordan and Egypt don't play ball and allow the ethnic displacement to continue to happen, okay, then they're just going to stop giving aid to Jordan. Except if they did that, then they would destabilize Jordan and Egypt, therefore making Jordan and Egypt no longer be successful vassal states. So this is yet another self-own by Donald Trump. Donald Trump and other people in his orbit don't understand that the aid given to Egypt and the aid given to Jordan is not given to these countries because we're woke and gay and really like brown people, okay? We really love Muslims, and that's why we're giving them aid. We give these countries aid and also additional security contracts so they can remain stable vassal states, okay? So they are not susceptible to revolution and coups, okay? That's it. And I don't think that at least Trump, in the way that he's talking about this stuff, understands that reality. The suspension of U.S. aid to Jordan risks destabilizing an economy where American support constitutes 7% of public revenues and 40% of total foreign aid, totaling $1.45 billion annually, says Milad Azar, market analyst at XTB Mena. That right there is also pennies in comparison to the amount of support that we give to Egypt. This is not done because this is not done simply out of the kindness of our hearts. This is done so that Jordan remains under the control of the kingdom and that they have enough money to keep funding their military, to put down any kind of popular mobilization against the monarchy. Same goes for Egypt. Okay?
Finish line to.
Here is anyway, let's watch this conversation that took place and I'll give you more details.
Discussions after this, and the relationship with Jordan has been very strong, has been with me, and it really has been with the country. But I think I've been closer than other presidents to Jordan and what Jordan represents. And it's an honor to have you and your son.
Why would Trump care if Jordan stays stable? I don't know. Do you want a country? From Trump's perspective, okay? If you are a advisor to Donald Trump, who is at least somewhat knowledgeable about Middle Eastern affairs, okay? Do you think that a nation state that is controlled by a Hashemite monarchy that was placed in that position of power by the British government, that is a loyal servant of Western interests, is better in the hands of said Hashemite monarch? Or is it better if the 3 million Palestinians were to actually do a successful coup and then use Jordan as a launching pad for any kind of West Bank military operations that they want to conduct? Now, if you're an advisor to Donald Trump, you look at that situation and go, Mr. President, please don't say this, because then this will lead to like significant political turmoil in Jordan. It will destabilize Jordan in its entirety. And then you will lose a stronghold that has been a reliable ally in the Israeli defense against other regional actors. You guys forget, Jordan is a part of the security cooperation in the region. When Iran was sending missiles into Israel, the Jordanian Air Force was intercepting those missiles. Okay? The same goes for Egypt as well. This already happened in Egypt once, where the Muslim Brotherhood took over Egypt. This was obviously not an exciting prospect for the American government, nor was it exciting for Israel. It was terrifying. Okay? Sources to Al Arabiya say the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's visit to Washington is postponed until further notice. Cairo is angry at the statements of Israel and America and sent a clear message to Washington. Egypt has 2 plans to rebuild Gaza without displacing its residents. Cairo has a ready response regarding Gaza file, and there's no change in it. The problem here, okay, the problem here with this delicate allegiance that we have designed in the region with regional actors such as Egypt and Jordan, okay, is that this level of destabilization is not immediately going to be beneficial for the Palestinians either, okay? And this also will give Israel the opportunity to further invade Jordan and Egypt if necessary. Now, the problem is Israel can't do it on its own. There is no way that Israel would be able to launch a 7-front war, okay, and go into Egypt and also go into Jordan at the same time and take over additional land from both of these countries. That might be a part of their greater Israel agenda, but they don't have the resources to do that. So who would have to do that for Israel? Think about it. Who would have to do that for Israel? We would. Our military. Okay? Our military. Yes. Genuine question. Why spend money and give aid to Jordan, who takes in displaced Palestinians, rather than finally coming up with a two-state solution? What do you mean? This has been, you're talking about the last century of deal making. It's too late to change that. Something that a lot, like, I use this example with the Saudi state, right? With the Saudi kingdom. MBS personally does not care about the plight of the Palestinians. He actually finds them in private to be a nuisance. He's openly revealed that position time and time again. He just wants to do sports washing. He wants the Saudi sovereign wealth fund to keep purchasing Western assets. He wants to openly normalize relations with Israel. But why does MBS create a red line when he consistently talks about like Israel doing full-blown ethnic cleansing? Why does Saudi Arabia, why does MBS openly state that they want a 67 boundary return to a two-state solution? Okay? Why does he want that? Because even Saudi Arabia understands that the Saudi public's demands are directly at odds with MBS's own personal interest. Okay? It does not matter what MBS personally thinks of the Palestinians. What matters is what the broader population in every Gulf state and what they think. Okay? You would have to spend a lot of your security, a lot of your military on squashing popular uprisings in your own country, because your people would lose their minds if it looked like you were actively and openly caving to Israel and allowing Israel to murder as many Palestinians as possible. This is why, here it is, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia appreciates the condemnation, disapproval, and total rejection announced by the brotherly countries towards what Benjamin Netanyahu stated regarding the displacement of the Palestinian people from their land, and the kingdom values the positions that emphasize the centrality of the Palestinian issue to the Arab and Muslim countries. Like, MBS would love it if all the Palestinians magically overnight died, okay? And the Palestinian cause went away. He would love it. So why is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia stating this? Why is it that all of their official statements on the matter are very anti-Israel, when we know MBS has time and time again repeated that he doesn't really care about Palestinians at all and sees them as a nuisance? Yeah, Saudi Crown Prince said he personally doesn't care about the Palestinian issue. The young Saudi population were. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman told U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken that he does not personally care about what he referred to as the Palestinian issue, according to a report in The Atlantic. Published on Wednesday, the report gave a picture of 11 months of Washington negotiation efforts in the region after the outbreak of the war in Gaza, citing 24 participants at the highest level of government in America and across the Middle East. Moin Rabbani talked about this on Al Jazeera. Can we watch this?
Moin Rabbani is a resident fellow at the Center for Conflict and Humanitarian Studies and joins us from Montreal. Moin, thanks so much for being with us on Al Jazeera. Let me ask you first about the fact that Jordan's King Abdullah is heading to Washington, D.C. tomorrow, as I understand it. This was always going to be something that Trump was potentially going to use to potentially put pressure on Jordan's king to try and take in more Palestinians, correct? I mean, that's what we've heard from Trump over the course of the past few weeks, is that Jordan and also Egypt should be taking in more Palestinians. So we expect more of this at this meeting.
Yes, and I think the Arab states, who have been fundamentally inert for the past 15, 16 months, are now coming to the realization that the alternative to an end to Israeli occupation, the alternative to a Palestinian state in Palestine, is a Palestinian state in one of their own countries, and instability and insecurity within their own borders. And I think it's on this basis that you're now seeing this much more concerted Arab response and Arab rejection of policy proposals emanating from the U.S. and Israel. That's clearly why the Jordanian monarch is in Washington. That's also why Egyptian leaders are heading to Washington. It explains the unprecedented campaign in the Saudi media. And basically, I think what Trump and Netanyahu have done in the past 2 days is administer the coup de grace to the prospects of further expanding what they call the Abraham Accords. I mean, to say, yes, there should be a Palestinian state in Saudi Arabia, or Jordan is the Palestinian homeland, and all the rest of it is clearly not going to fly. I mean, let's not forget, these are the most pro-Western Arab regimes in the Middle East. They are very loyal allies of Washington, but not to the point of committing political suicide and signing their own death warrants.
Moan,
That's the only thing. That is the only real thing. You're wrong. MBS and his country support Jordan and their values. Brain dead comment. Why would Jordan become unstable? Brain dead comment. It has its own fighting force. Be for real, brother. Jordan can defend itself. Hassan, be for real, brother. The Jordanian king has been through multiple wars and will now be accepting. There will be a 3-minute ad break for those who haven't subscribed. What the hell? I don't even run ads any longer. Chatter, goddamn. Even if I did, that would still be a 2-parter, which was rendered illegal. You're a year late. Is this dynamic similar in Turkey? Yes, it is. Yes. Recep Tayyip Erdogan loves the contracts that he has with Israel. His son directly benefits from it. He has a shipping company. Okay? But the Turkish population obviously has a very different attitude towards Israel. And this is precisely the reason why Recep Tayyip Erdogan has to act like he is very angry at Netanyahu all the time, calling him Adolf Hitler and stuff. While simultaneously, they've even talked about, he's even talked about doing a complete blockade, or not a blockade, but a ban on all shipping to Israel. Except they're still continuing their shipments to Israel. They're just changing the manuscripts and claiming that they're actually shipping stuff to Palestine instead of Israel, while still, like Recep Tayyip Erdogan is overriding his own trade embargo that he put forth. Do you understand? The manifest, not manuscript, sorry. Because on the one hand, he has to make it seem like he is standing strong against Israel for the sake of his own public not rising up against him. But on the other hand, he is a NATO nation. Okay? And by the way, he's been rewarded handsomely for playing ball with America's interests in the region and playing ball with Israel. Look at Syria. Syria is a great example of Recep Tayyip Erdogan getting many benefits for being Israel's lapdog, loyal servant.
Earlier on Al Jazeera, a Hamas official was saying that the Israelis, according to him, are intentionally sabotaging this ceasefire deal and that they're undermining the agreement. If you look at the developments these past few hours, and there have been a lot of developments with all that's transpired, what do you make of all this and what do you think might happen next?
Well, unless you're reading the New York Times or watching the BBC, it's transparently obvious what's going on, and that includes readers and viewers of the Israeli media. You have this combination of Israeli violations of the agreement ratified by Israel and Hamas, and that began implementation a few weeks ago. You have Israeli intentions not to negotiate the second phase of this agreement, which would lead to a durable ceasefire rather than just a suspension of hostilities. You have Netanyahu seeking to drag out the first phase of the ceasefire so that Israel can retrieve all of its captives from the Gaza Strip without, in exchange, calling time on its genocidal military campaign on the Gaza Strip to then be able to resume it. And overlaying all of this, you have the Trump proposal for the mass forcible displacement of every last Palestinian from the Gaza Strip to the Arab world. And Hamas is using what leverage it does have and is announcing that it is indefinitely suspending the further exchange of captives with Israel until Israel decides to actually implement what it signed, and more importantly, until Washington makes up its mind about the future of this agreement. Because at the end of the day, Netanyahu can say what he wants and do what he wants, but the crucial decisions about the future of this agreement are going to be made by Washington. And Washington will have to decide whether it will compel Israel to continue with the implementation of this agreement or allow Israel to derail it.
Moan, just quickly, we only have about a couple of minutes left here, but just very quickly, what, from your perspective, has to happen in order for this ceasefire deal to continue?
Well, Israel can't, once again, you negotiate an agreement, then you negotiate how you implement it, and then once it begins implementation, you negotiate a thoroughgoing revision and transformation of that agreement. That's not going to fly. There is an agreement reached. You either implement it or you don't, and you suffer the consequences. And the question now is, will Israel be allowed to derail this agreement by not fulfilling its obligations, or will it be forced to comply? It really is that simple.
All right. Well, Moan, I mean, do you foresee that what you're talking about that needs to happen, do you foresee it actually happening?
You're asking me a very difficult question, because with this crew and the White House now, and particularly with President Trump, I mean, trying to understand his political agenda is a little bit like trying to
We'll get to Trump and Elon at the White House in a second after this is over.
Conduct a political analysis of yogurt. It's entirely unclear. On the one hand, he forced Israel to accept this agreement and now is making a proposal that makes it thoroughly irrelevant. Is he just throwing up trial balloons and seeing, which spaghetti strand sticks to which wall?
Moan.
Is he being...
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have run out of time, so we're going to have to leave the conversation.
Yeah. All right. Give me the link. Give me the link for the Elon talks.